Hello. Today we will be reviewing a survey regarding the opinions of Star Wars fans that was sent out to the public. In total, there are 1,100 responses with many answers, including thoughts on each film, many of the main characters, and opinions on them. If the responder was a fan themselves, if they were a Star Trek fan, if they were knowledgeable of the Star Wars expanded universe, their income, age, education, and gender as well, and actually what movies they've seen themselves. And of course, who shot first, Han or Greedo? So let's get into it. Here you can see a bubble chart regarding audience feelings toward each of the main characters. The responses range from very unfavorable to somewhat unfavorable, neutral, somewhat favorable, and very favorable. So to create a numeric return for each of the character, those responses were turned into a 1 through 5 values and then averaged for each character. So you can see like Han Solo has a 4.6 and Emperor has a 3.0. Also in this bubble chart, I used a color to define strong female leads, so like pink and purple. Male leads were in green and blue, and then like Sith, their dark characters were in red. And yeah, you can kind of see how I grouped them together by color as well. So here you can clearly see main Jedi and women of the storyline are the most favorited by the audience, while Jar Jar, Binks, and Palpatine are far more unfavorable. Here we have the same type of information, just plotted on a stacked bar chart. This time, though, responses are calculated by count, not average, and summarized as a percentage of the whole. Although there wasn't a real difference between the percentage and the count, because the count was pretty much full because all responses were filled out. So characters were then ranked by very favorable, dark green, all the way to least favorable, which is red. And interestingly, from this particular graph, you can see the not liked is very high for certain characters. So Darth Vader, Emperor Palpatine, and Jar Jar Binks are all very unliked. And so, unsurprisingly, maybe you can see that Jar Jar Binks takes the cake for having more negative responses than positive overall. Here is another similar chart. The tree map has the same values as the bubble chart from before on slide 2. On the right, though, you can find all of the responses, favorable, unfavorable, etc., for each character. Here, you can only see like Han Solo, Yoda, but if you click one of the squares on the tree map, it will filter out and show each of the responses individually for each character. So we'll go back and look at that in Tableau afterwards. So moving on from characters, here's the breakdown in film rankings. Here we have each film ranked by average response from best to least. The survey required a 1 through 6 ranking of the movies in order from favorite to least favorite. So each movie has a unique, each response has a unique ranking for each movie, unlike the character responses, which could be identical for all. So for example, you could put very favorable for all characters, whereas here you could only put 6 for one movie. Here you can also see I've added lightsabers in Tableau, although I couldn't get the bars to actually also be added in Tableau, but I'm sure there's a way. So I improvised a little bit. So clearly you can see episodes 5, 6, and 4 there in order at the top, taking the cake. And then episodes 1, 2, and 3, the prequels, lagging behind. So here is the same response, but just each response is individually plotted out. 1 through 6, you can't see. It's hard to distinguish because they all overlap on each other, but it does give technically a box and whisker plot, and there wasn't a lot of numerical data in this, so I wanted to use this somehow. So you can see that anything below a 4, which would be the third best movie for episode 5, would be on the lower extreme, telling us nearly everyone would highly rank episode 5, whereas episodes 4 and 3 had more variance near their lower and upper quartiles respectively. You can see a clear trend between the trilogy, typically making no lower than a 2, whereas the prequels rarely reach above a 4 rank in anyone's films. So here is a movie rank, but this time it's averaged with between age. So here I took the age categories, which were like 18 through 29, 30 through 44, etc., and I averaged them kind of right in the middle. So you'll see 25, 37, 49, and 61 are the ages there on the bottom axis, and then the average rank is on the y-axis, and each film is color coded accordingly. Clearly, the most distance between scores comes in the 35 to 40 year old range, with the trilogy films being significantly higher than the prequels. Interestingly, you can see the trilogy scores start to decline with older generations, while the younger generations have some of the highest prequel scores. This would be expected because they grew up with these movies. So, in my mind, that makes sense. And I would also probably rank them similarly. Episode 1 is particularly interesting, as with older generation, it moves into second place on their favorite list. Okay, here's a flow or Sankey chart, as it's called, if the user was a Star Wars fan and what their gender is and what their education is. It's helpful for breaking down that most responders consider themselves fans, more were male, and most were college educated. For reference, this was made from a website called rawgraphs.io, and they have some really great tools. So finally, the last visualization here is a map that shows the response rate by region for the survey, and then breaks down on the right there income, education, gender, and age into their respective categories. This one's interactive. You can choose a region on the left on the map, and a filter will be applied to the right and break down each area. And so, what are some recommendations? So, recommendations. So, if we were to go to the board with this, I would say we definitely want to focus on what made Episode 5 the most favorite movie of all. That can include plot surprises, older film techniques, possibly. And we want to keep those really strong male and female leads. Keep them funny and charming. I think it's important that they don't take themselves too seriously. And then some of the supporting cast characters that kind of had a laugh or were funny aren't as well liked. So Jar Jar, Lando, they're not as highly viewed as people might think they are. And then I would suggest catering the films towards the 30 to 44-year-old range, because they dislike the films by far that are the newest ones. There you can see my data source. This comes from a 538 SurveyMonkey survey. Custom calculations. So here are 4 custom calculations I did. So you can see I'm turning the sentiment of what they thought of a character to a numeric value. And then I'm turning an age rank into a numeric value as well. And then I'm flipping on the bottom left one there, I'm flipping the film rank from a 6 to a 1 or a 5 to a 2. I'm basically just making them the inverse because of the scale I was on. And then similarly on the bottom right, I was taking the average of each film, and I was basically subtracting 6 from it to get the inverse. So because they were scaled oppositely. Okay, so then finally, I just wanted to show the filter on this. So I can click Han Solo, and you'll see that like he has very few unfavorable likes, but is extremely favorable. When you go to Emperor Palpatine, he's very neutral. Jar Jar is very unfavorable. Anakin, again, is somewhat favorable, somewhat unfavorable. Okay. Oh, there's lightsabers. And then the region breakdown. So here, I actually moved Alaska and Hawaii into here too. There's kind of a YouTube video on how to do that. So if I click on Pacific, you'll see all of the categories move accordingly, mountain, etc. All right.